Thanks for joining, everyone. I'm Kate Masery. I'm the program director at Eating with the Ecosystem. And so just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about our project and a little bit about Eating with the Ecosystem. And thank you for joining our first ever Seafood Market Blitz. And so we've got a small group right now. And so what I'll do is I'll allow you, we can keep the microphones on. If you do end up having a bunch of background noise or something, we might have you mute them. But I think it worked out last time that people could just kind of ask questions as we went along. So as long as that works for you guys, that should work for us. So feel free to interrupt me. So to start with, I'll tell you kind of a little bit about Eating with the Ecosystem. We're a small nonprofit. We're based in Rhode Island, but our work focuses regionally throughout New England. And our mission is to promote what we call a place-based approach to sustaining New England's wild seafood through flourishing food webs, healthy habitats, and short adaptive supply chains. And so our vision within that is a regional seafood marketplace that acts as a support system for New England's marine ecosystems and the people who depend on them. And so we're really committed to advancing a local seafood marketing system that mirrors ecosystem dynamics, supports and engages community-based fishermen, and creates systems resilience through positive feedback loops between the people who eat seafood, us as consumers, and the ecosystems that produce it. And so we have 5 anchors, which we consider our principles of a place-based approach to sustaining wild seafood. And I'll quickly kind of go through these with you guys now. And so the first one is proximity. And so we like to tell our consumers to eat seafood that comes from the ecosystem closest to you. Now, that's kind of the simple, it's, eat local seafood. But beyond that, we kind of like to expand. And so that's what the rest of our anchors are. It's not just about eating local seafood. The next anchor is symmetry. And so we want you to eat in balance with the species that are available in our local ecosystem. So eat a diversity of species in proportion kind of to their natural abundances. And so species that are more abundant in our local waters then make up a bigger part of our diets. Species that are less abundant in our local waters then make up a smaller part of our diet. The next one is adaptability. And that one's all about our changing ecosystems. And so as we know, our ecosystems change. And so we think that our seafood diet should change with our ecosystems. And that's whether it's due to seasonal changes or it could be due to longer term changes due to things like climate change. The next one is connectivity. This one's about nurturing the ecosystems and the habitats that produce our seafood. And so taking care of them through restoration efforts or through our own kind of practices in our home, making sure that we don't use chemicals or things that might go down the drain and harm our fish habitats, that type of thing. And so the connectivity is all about taking care of the habitats that produce our seafood. And then the last one is community. This one's about knowing your fishermen and supporting them as members of our community, because without them catching our seafood, we're not going to have a lot of local seafood. And they're also really great resources. They're on the water every day. They see the changes that are taking place in our local ecosystems. And so they're really great resources to learn from and to figure out what's happening in our ecosystems. And so that's just kind of a little bit of background for who we are at Eating with the Ecosystem. And so, as I kind of described, an important part of Eating with the Ecosystem's mission is balancing our diets with what the ecosystem produces. And the challenge, of course, is whether or not those non-mainstream fish are sold and accessible at the shop and the markets where we live. And so this Seafood Market Blitz will be the first attempt to attain kind of a broad snapshot of what species are made available in New England retail markets, and to understand the composition of our New England seafood marketplace, including the existence of local species, as well as the shelf space that they take up alongside other species such as imported shrimp from Vietnam or cod from Norway or something like that. So we'll be able to kind of compare the amount of local species with and the diversity of local species available with what's also available in our seafood marketplace. And so this Market Blitz is a pilot project. It's our first attempt at it, but our goal is to learn from this first attempt and be able to hold this biannually. And so twice a year, and then we'll be able to develop kind of a time series of data and see how our markets are changing, if efforts like ours and other people in the region to try to promote more New England species and underutilized species, if we're seeing a change in the composition of those species, whether or not our efforts are working. And we'll be able to kind of monitor these things over time. And so this idea is based actually on the idea of a bio-blitz. And a bio-blitz is there's one that's coordinated in Rhode Island every year by the Rhode Island Natural History Survey, and there's other ones held throughout the country. And so a bio-blitz is when people go out into a certain geographic space, such as a park, and they have a certain amount of time, and they have to try to identify every living thing kind of in that area of time to give them a snapshot of what's in their local ecosystem. And so we're applying that concept to the seafood marketplace kind of for the first time, which we're really excited about. And so for our project, we're sending you guys out into the market, and the project is starting on March 5th. So it's starting on Monday, which is really exciting. And it's going to run for 2 weeks. We had originally started talking about only running it for 1 week and having it run from March 5th through the 11th, but we've extended it to March 5th through the 18th, so that you have plenty of time to visit your markets. And so that other participants, if you have friends who haven't signed up yet, but if other participants do want to join, then they'll have a little bit longer to do so. So we're going to start with kind of where to go in your market. You guys should have received market assignments at this point, available both through a link on our website as well as through the email that I sent out. And it should have brought you to a Google sheet that had your name and what market you're supposed to visit listed. And so if you were assigned a grocery store or a supermarket, the place in the market that you want to head to is the display case, the seafood display case. As you guys know, in seafood market or in grocery stores, there's other places in the store that sell seafood. There's a freezer department. Might be a canned aisle that has like things like canned tuna or canned salmon. We only need you to visit the seafood case in the grocery store. So you not have to visit the frozen food aisle or the rest of the supermarket, only the seafood case. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kate, I have a quick question. I assume you're not showing any content, right? I only see myself on the screen, and I just want to make sure
you
that's
should
correct.
be seeing pictures.
Okay.
Is everybody else seeing the screen? It should show a picture of the seafood case.
It does say something like swap content and video. Maybe I'm going to click that,
try
and
that.
hopefully I won't lose you.
And I may have to leave because the plumber's on the way.
Okay. We're recording it, so if you do need to step out, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
Right. I am not seeing you.
Christina, are you seeing me?
Your screen, I mean.
I don't. I see the PowerPoint.
You see the PowerPoint.
You do see the PowerPoint. So I wonder. All right. Well, it's okay. I saw the document, so I'll just follow along this way.
Okay. Sorry about that. You should be
okay.
able to in your viewing box switch it so that you can see the PowerPoint. But
you know what? I see something behind here. There's like a little.
Maybe if you make your screen with like your face on it smaller, you should be able to see the PowerPoint, hopefully.
Yeah,
but it is the slides that we posted, and so if you do have questions, maybe you can bring up it side by side.
Yeah. All right, I'll keep working on this. Thank you for letting me know. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. And
that's going to go on your recording.
There's a chat on the side, and maybe Christina can help troubleshoot with you if you want to type into the chat as well.
Okay, thanks.
If you are visiting a supermarket, if you were assigned a supermarket, then you'll go to just the display case. You don't have to worry about the freezer case or any other part of the store. If you were assigned a seafood market, and it should say on your assignment whether or not it's a supermarket or a seafood market. If you were assigned a seafood market, then we want you to go to the main display case, but also the freezer section. And so in most small seafood. The freezer section is a small little cooler or maybe a glass door type one, but it's typically a small section. It's not as huge as in the grocery. And so in that case, we do want you to record both the seafood that's available in the display case, but also in the freezer case. You guys have any questions about that?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
No.
I know that in the previous session, the previous training, there was a question about what if the freezer case is kind of not, you can't just like walk right up to it, it's behind the counter or something like that. In that case, if it's not available, then you do not have to visit it. But if it is something that's available, if they do allow customers to go back to that area or to view the freezer case, then we'd like you to record it. But if it's not something that's available, then do not worry about it. And so once you get to your market, you probably want to explain what you are doing to the person behind the counter selling you the seafood, because they're probably not used to most people walking in and starting to record information or take pictures. And so what we suggest doing is we have a blurb that I've posted on the website and in your email that you can print out and hand to them, and that has my contact information on it. It has information about the Seafood Market Blitz, as well as information about eating with the ecosystem. And so if they do have questions, they can email me. But it also describes the project, so you can tell them kind of why you're collecting the information, that we're trying to get an idea of the existence of local seafood in retail markets, and understand the composition of our New England seafood marketplace, and that you're doing this as a citizen scientist participant for eating with the ecosystem, and that they shouldn't have a problem with it. One of the things that we're kind of having as optional is the option of taking photos. So if you are someone that wants to take photos, we do suggest, just giving them a heads up. I'm going to take some pictures of the seafood, and I don't think that they will have a problem with it. But if they don't want you to take photos, then we're perfectly okay with you not taking photos. You don't have to like force that on them. So it's helpful if you can take photos, but if they don't want you to, or if you don't feel comfortable asking, then do not worry about it. So as I said, it's kind of an option for you if you would like to take photos, but it's definitely helpful for us. And since this is a pilot project, we're kind of testing out what methodology works best for future market blitzes as well. And so having the photos would be helpful for us. And so one of the ways that there's kind of two options or two parts of the photo taking process. One is that we want you to take photos of the seafood case as a whole, so that we can estimate the share of shelf space given to local seafood items. And so in that case, you'd want to line up your photos so that you've got a photo of the whole case. So in some cases, the case might not fit into one photo, and so you'd start on one side and then take another photo, and maybe it would take 2 or 3 photos to get the whole case included. And you want to have enough kind of overlapping space so that we can see where they line up correctly. And so I'm going to show you what an example of that would look like right here. This is a market that Christina visited in Stop and Shop in Middletown, Rhode Island, I believe. And so we can see kind of that she's got the whole case shown in 2 pictures, which is fine. There's enough kind of overlap between that we can figure out how they line up. And so that's kind of how you'd want to take your pictures of the seafood case itself. The other thing is we're going to have you take pictures if there's any what we're calling cause labels, and I'll go over that section of it kind of later. Good. So these are for the photos. Well, I'll go over the cause label, what those photos look like in a little bit. But additionally, if you want to take, if you're confused about a seafood item, like how it's labeled, or you just don't know what it is or something, if you have a question, feel free to take a picture and you can email it to me or Christina, and we'll kind of help answer the question that way. Additionally, if you want to take pictures of you participating in the project, so you recording information, that type of thing. Anything that we can share on social media, or that you want to share on social media, that would be great. You can either email them to me and I'll share them on Eating with the Ecosystems page, or you can tag Eating with the Ecosystem in Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. All right, so yeah, if you do want to take pictures of you participating in the project, we'd love to see some of those, and it will help us kind of recruit more participants, and we'd love to feature you on our pages. So please feel free to send those along, and you can send those to me or Christina. So this again, what the pictures of the case as a whole would look like. And then Christina, do you want to go over some of the recording the data section?
Yes. So on the data sheets, the first column is the ID column, and that's already pre-filled in, and that's just so that we can easily track each of your entries for each of the items. And we'll talk more about why that's important later. So for the species, salmon, cod, haddock, whatever, it should be labeled so that you can see when you're at the market what the seafood is. But if it's not, then just ask somebody behind the counter and annotate verbally that you obtain that information from somebody. Because, especially at supermarkets, the people working behind the counter aren't always 100% familiar with the products that they're selling. So this way we'll just have an idea that there could possibly be some error with this data. And the same goes for origin. Like at grocery stores, usually if it's somewhere in the United States, it says just like USA, like especially at Stop and Shop, that's fine. If it has the specific state that it's from, like Massachusetts, Maine, then feel free to put that in. Or you might see, different countries. And again, if that's not labeled, then just ask the person behind the counter. So for the price per pound is ideal because that way we'll have a common standard through for all of the entries, or per unit, because sometimes like stuffies are sold per unit or crab cakes. If the price per pound or unit isn't available, because one of the Stop and Shops I went to, the salmon, it was like they sold a 5-ounce portion for like $6. So if that's the case, then just record the price and the weight of the item, and we'll do the conversion to price per pound on our own later.
Great.
So the next column, it's not labeled, and in the guidelines, we changed it to product form instead of state of the seafood. So this is if the seafood is fresh or frozen, previously frozen, live, any of that stuff. So there's different numbers in the column header for each one of these, and you just fill in the number associated with that. Oh, and let me backtrack a little bit. So for like the species and origin, if you can't figure out the information, then please just put a U in your entry so that we know it's just not something that you forgot to record, so that we know that you couldn't obtain that information. And for state or for product form, there's also a number for unknown in case you can't figure it out. If the seafood is fresh, and this is, I guess, particularly at grocery stores, they usually, if it looks fresh but it was previously frozen, it's typically on the label. But if it's not, then feel free to ask the person behind the counter to see if it was previously frozen. So the harvest method is if it was farmed or wild caught. And again, if that's not on there, then please ask to see if they know. On Thursday, somebody brought up for the wild caught, if they happened to say specifically how it was caught, like if it was speared or like pole caught, if that information would be valuable. And if there is something more specific that is labeled or that the person behind the counter tells you, then please feel free to add that as well. The more data, the better.
Great. And so we're going to show you kind of what some of these labels might look like in these pictures. Can you guys see those?
I still can't see the pictures, but you put them in the pre-read, right? In the
Yes.
other, okay. So I'll get it there.
Okay, so these are kind of examples of what some of those labels that might look like. So if you for those of you who can see the screen, there's one over here that has a flounder fillet. It shows you $9.99 per pound, so that's the price you'd want to record. It says product of the USA, so that would be the origin. So you could write down USA. It says wild caught. And so then you would mark the wild caught number, and then it says previously frozen, and so that's your product form. And so that's kind of an example of what that would look like. There's other example of this is a smaller seafood market, and they have kind of very specific origins. So it says Point Judith, it says New Bedford, that kind of stuff. And so in that case, instead of putting USA, you could put the Point Judith down. And then there's another example over here with a crab cake, and it's $3.49 each. And so in that case, you can put the unit price instead of the price per pound because you don't have the price per pound.
Should we ask them what things weigh? I mean, will they weigh it? If they're nice, they should weigh it for you to tell you, right?
Yeah, they can, but we don't want them having to pick up stuff that you're not going to buy.
Okay.
And so it's a little different if you were going to be like buying an item, but we don't want them to have to pick up everything that you're not going to buy. And so the unit price in that case is fine. That's how it's labeled.
Well, and also for those are considered value added items, so the price per pound wouldn't be as useful because we don't know what portion of it is crab and then what portion of it is other ingredients. So the unit price would be better for something like that.
Okay, I get it.
So this is kind of an example of what a filled in data sheet looks like. Christina, you want to walk them through this?
Yeah. So as you can see in the first column, there's the ID number that is already filled in for you. And I think right now we have 13 entries per data sheet. So if you multiply that by 4, I think that gives you 52.
I added it to make it 15 now.
Okay. So I guess there's 15 now. So you would have a total of 60. Yeah, and then the next one, just the species. I have an example, just put a V next to it if you obtain that verbally. Yeah, origin, same thing. Oh yeah, sorry, at the very top, if you could write down your market name and preferably the town, state that it was in, just so that we can keep the data more organized. And also the date and time of your visit. You don't have to be super specific with the time, but that does help us because a lot of seafood cases later in the day will have less product in it as people buy it. So
yeah, that was one of my questions too, for exactly that reason. Do you have a preference that you'd like us to try to hit a certain time of day, or you really are trying to understand the variability and don't care?
Ideally, if you can go when the market is most stocked, then that would be great. But for example, a supermarket, their seafood case early in the morning, they might not have fully stocked at that point. But they might have it, a little bit later in the day. And so maybe in that case, it would be better. And so depending on kind of what market you go to, again, you can go when it's convenient for you. We don't want this to be a huge hassle, but if you can go when you think it's most stocked, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so for price, it's pretty straightforward. Please just specify, if it is per pound. There's another example later on that shows where it's each, or like that salmon example with the 5 ounces. Yep, and there's the different numbers on top. This is an older data sheet. We've modified it, so the data sheet that you actually see will be different from the one in the PowerPoint. We've added a number 7 to fresh for unknown, and also for the cause label, or cause label at the bottom in the footer, which we don't have shown here. There's an N if there is no cause label, just so that we know. Again, that was just data that you couldn't obtain. So yeah, more specifics on the cause label. So there are some to try and have more sustainable seafood, or to even promote local caught seafood. There's different labels that different organizations have come up with to indicate that a product was sustainably harvested or caught from like a certain, like local fisherman organization. So if you see a label like this, and we have examples on the next page, we have, I think, six or seven different labels that are already pre-recorded at the bottom for you to choose from. And if the label that you see isn't one of those seven, then just put an 8 in that column and then make an annotation of what the label is at the bottom, along with the ID number for that entry. And that's one of the reasons why we had the pre-filled in ID numbers. So if it was entry number 3 and it had a label that wasn't in the footer, then just write, number 3 and whatever the label is. And if you are taking pictures, please take a picture of the label as well. And if there's, if you have 20 different products that all have different labels, I mean, it's understandable if you don't want to take a picture of each one. But if it is like a display case and the cause label is just on that the little label that has the price and previously frozen and origin, if you just have a picture of the entire case, then we can zoom in and look at the labels individually. So you wouldn't have to take like an individual picture.
But if it's just like one or two kind of labels, then it'd be helpful to have kind of a closer view. And so these are kind of examples of what some of these labels look like. So you might see these kind of on your on the same kind of label with the name of the fish or the price of the fish. You might also see a label such as the Rhode Island Seafood logo label, just kind of a sticker on the case that's not necessarily with any particular type of fish. It's just kind of on the case itself that that store sells seafood. In that case, you would take a picture of that, but maybe send us an email to explain kind of that's the situation, or write it on the top, like someplace a spare space on your data sheet, but don't necessarily give it an ID number. We had that question through an email, so I wanted to answer that for the whole group. Oh, also for the there's kind of the red, yellow, green choices. You might see those, especially in a market like a Whole Foods market. If that's the case, then it might be applied to literally your whole case. They might have a bunch of seafood and all of them are either labeled green or yellow. Then you could take, as Christina said, kind of a picture of the whole case in that sense. And so here's kind of an example of where that logo might be found at the market. So it's attached to the haddock fillet sign right above the origin. And so this one is an example of the Gulf of Maine responsibly harvested label. And that you can see over on the side of this data sheet, the last column is the cause, and down at the bottom we have the different types of kind of labels that we just showed in the past picture. And so the Gulf of Maine responsibly harvested is number 4, and so they wrote a number 4 right now in the cause column.
So this is probably an excessively complicated question, but if you know that a certain cause, if it has that label, it means X, do you want us to, I assume you just want us to put what's there and not add the information like about how it was fished or something like that?
Yeah, just what's there. You don't have to. We're familiar with most of these labels, and we can kind of look up the additional information.
Perfect.
So just what's there. Okay. Christina, you want to go over this part?
Yes. So if there's, in some cases, there'll be like the same species, but different data associated with it. So like when I went to Stop and Shop, there were 3 different, I don't want to say types of salmon, but 3 different sections of salmon.
Wow.
One of them was like, just said like Atlantic salmon. And then another one just said salmon, and it was the, so much, or 5 ounces for a certain price. And then another one was like value added because they had, it was like stuffed with some sort of like seafood mix. And there was also just like salmon heads as well. So if there's Or they could even have different origins, like one could have been farmed and another one could have been, like wild caught in Norway. So for cases like that, we need an entry for each item so that we can differentiate between them. So we wouldn't just put salmon and then have, 3 or 4 different origins listed in one box. Just make an entry for each one.
Great. So this is kind of an example of what that looks like on the data sheet. You can see that Christina filled out. She's got 3 different salmon entries in along this way. So we've got the Atlantic salmon, the price per pound, which is probably representing this salmon up front. Then there's the salmon, which is showing more the kind of the steak cut one, and again the price per pound. And then the salmon again, that's a different cut in the back. And so you'd fill out, as she said, one row for each of those entries.
So the other thing that we need is for you guys to sketch the cases, and this is so that we can, it helps us in estimating what percentage of shelf space is given to the local seafood. So even if you take pictures of the cases, depending on, because I mean, in the example before, I accidentally missed one of the items as I was going through, so I was trying to go from front to back in the case, but I accidentally skipped one, so my entries didn't exactly go in order. And sometimes the pictures, it's hard to tell what seafood is what. So the sketch helps us to identify the seafood in the pictures, if you took pictures. If you don't take pictures, then the sketch is what we're going to go off of to try and determine the shelf space. So in the Excel file, there's some blank rectangles that you can use to do a sketch. So just, I mean, if you don't take pictures, trying to get the sketch to scale, at least like percentage-wise, would be ideal, because that would help with the estimation. On Thursday, somebody asked if dimensions would be helpful. If you are comfortable estimating or trying to obtain dimensions of the seafood case, that would be great too. Everything will help us to estimate the percentages. So when you draw the different sections, you'll label each section with the ID number from the data sheet. And we have a picture of this after this slide. And let's say if there's, if you're at a seafood market and they have 2 fresh cases, then you would need to do one for each case. Yeah.
Do you want to see that picture?
Yeah.
So here's an example of the case, but we'll go to the drawing. And so here's kind of that sketch that Christina described. So this is a sketch of that seafood case that we showed kind of in the beginning and the one that was in the last slide. And so Christina drew out both the display case on the left side as well as the display case on the right side, because in some cases, your case might not fit into one rectangle. And so she labeled each of the ID numbers associated with the seafood. So column number 1 represented steamers, and so steamer clams, and so that was the column number 1 labeled in the picture. Anything else you want to add to that, Christina?
Nope, that's about it. And here are some sample data sheets that are pre-filled in. You can see where we have the U's for items where the origin wasn't known, even asking the person behind the counter. So this was at Stop and Shop, so there were no cause labels on anything, which is why there's just N's in the cause label column. And if you look on the data sheet on the right, you can see where for that one entry number 18 for the Atlantic salmon, it was $4.49 for 5 ounces. And then for the stuffed clam, for item number 20, that it was $1.49 each. And even if it's something like a value-added item, if you can ask the person behind the counter, like what seafood was used to make it. So like if it was a crab cake, ask them if they know what kind of crab it was and where the crab came from, then that would be really useful information.
Great. So I think Christina will go over kind of if you took pictures, how to upload those. And there's more detailed kind of instructions in your guidelines as well. And so you can always check back at those.
So yes, if you decide to take pictures, then just upload the pictures to your computer, and we just want the file names a certain way so that it's easy to go through the information that you send us. So just start with your last name and then the case. So let's say that you went to a seafood market and there was like the fresh case and a frozen case. Then you would put, like for me, it'd be Montello fresh case. If I took two pictures, fresh case 1, fresh case 2. And so like the example pictures we had in the beginning, fresh case 1 would be the one on the left, fresh case 2 would be the one on the right. And if it was frozen case, then it would be Montello frozen case 1. So for the cause labels, just put your last name, label, and then whatever ID number is associated with that entry. So like the first one with the example that we had with the haddock, it would just be Montello label 1. And that'll just help us associate the pictures with the labels.
Great. So I think these are some examples of how to label it kind of based on the pictures how they line up. And so as Christina said, Montello fresh case 1, Montello fresh case 2. So those are, the same seafood case, but two different pictures representing the fresh case. And then the cause label, so Montello label 1 that represented the haddock. There's a question from someone in the previous webinar about if you visit more than one market. So most of you are only assigned to one market at this point. If you would like to visit an additional market, then what we'll have you do is have a folder that you put all of these in for the first market that you visit, and then create a whole separate folder for if you visit an additional market. And in terms of visiting additional markets, there's some empty markets at the bottom of that market assignment sheet that you're welcome to kind of fill in. And most of them are kind of open-ended. So for example, visit a supermarket in Maine. And so you would fill in what supermarket in Maine you visited and put your name, or that you plan on visiting, and put your name next to that. The one thing that we ask is that you make sure that it's not a market that's already listed on the list, so that we don't have two people visiting the same market. If you have questions or you would like us to assign you a market and you're willing to visit, a second market, that's fine. Just send me an email and we'll find a market for you.
So this next step is completely optional. Don't feel any pressure to do this if you don't want to. But if you are willing to, it would be super, super helpful for us to expedite processing the data if you took what you filled in on your data sheets at the supermarket and put them into the Excel file. So if you just open up the Excel file that you use to print out your data sheets and typed in what you wrote down, that would be awesome. Like I said, no pressure if you don't have the time or just don't feel comfortable entering it. That is absolutely fine. And then when you save the spreadsheet, just save it as your last name and data. And again, if you visit multiple markets, then if you just put these in different folders, since it'll have a folder for each market, that'll keep everything separate.
And just so you guys know, I know some people, not everybody has Excel. A lot of people do have the Microsoft Office Suite, but if you don't have Excel, we have uploaded your data sheets both in PDF form and in Excel sheet. So you can print it from either version. And those are available both in the email that you got sent as well as the website.
So even if you do decide to enter the data into the Excel spreadsheet, we still would like for you to either scan or take a picture of the data sheets so that we can just do some cross-checking to make sure that there was no transposition errors. And also take a picture of or scan the sketches. So yeah, if you don't have a scanner, then just taking a picture with your digital camera or your phone is fine. And here are some kind of blurry examples of the different data sheets. So for each one, there's just, Montello data 1, 2, 3, just so we know how many sheets there are, and then my sketch of the case. So in the guidelines, you'll find more specific, oh, sorry, is there a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay. In the guidelines, there's more specific instructions as to how to put all of the data into folders and send us the data. So you guys can go through that, and if you have any questions about it, then feel free to email us. We can answer any questions you guys have. Part of it does involve compressing them into a zip file and sending them to us, and there's instructions and pictures on how to do that if you don't know how. And I think somebody else brought up possibly just sharing everything as like a Google folder and like Google Docs or something. And if you're more comfortable doing that, then yeah, just send us the link and we can just download the data.
Great. Does anybody have any questions?
No, this I think is very clear. You guys have thought about almost every contingency.
Well, great. If there are any extra questions or someone comes up with a question, while you're at your market or, while you're filling out your data at home or trying to send it to us, anything like that, feel free to shoot us an email and we'll be happy to answer those additional questions. Both Christina and I's email addresses are listed on in a couple different places on your guidelines and as well as I believe on this PowerPoint. So feel free to shoot us an email if you do have any extra questions.
Oh, Kate, one thing I just thought of. Do we have our phone numbers available to people so if they're at the market, they can get a hold of us more quickly instead of trying
So I
to
don't
email
think
us?
that we listed it on the sheet, but I'm happy to give you my number, and my number is available on our website as well, but it's 207-752-7407. And so you can either text me, just let me know, you're one of our market participants, or give me a call, and I'll try to if I don't answer right away, I'll try to get back to you.
Well, that's pretty heroic for you guys to offer that service.
Well, it just seems like it'd be rather inconvenient if you get to the market and have a question and you're like,
Yep.
oh, I have to go home and email and go back to the market. So just going to make it as easy for you guys as possible.
Great, thanks.
So yeah, if there's no other questions, then thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and thanks again for signing up to take part in this Market Blitz. We're really kind of excited for this to be our pilot project and to have this carry on into future years. And so if you do have suggestions, even after taking part in it, for how to make it easier on you as a participant or more effective, then please send us an email as well, and we'll work that into future considerations.
Great. I'm excited to see what happens, what you learn. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.